Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. We actually have a return guest for this episode because Heccu was on an episode previously. If you don't remember, this will actually trigger your memory. She came on right around the time that CCT first began, and she actually had like a big topic about that and how it would like change the game for like all the small teams. Although, fully enough, the irony is the point she made on that one was, but that they did keep inviting all the big teams. And if you saw CCT recently, it's just all the big teams trying to win it again. It's not even all the small teams. So in a way, you were sort of pressing it on that. Plus, I'll just say this is one of those naughty Thorin jokes, right? I also appreciate people from Latvia that are just consistently world class. Brocky. And people who don't, when they get to the top, just get a really big ego that sort of like ruins their career. So you kinda the people I like from Latvia. Whatever. You saw what I did there. You saw what I did there. Come on. Welcome back, Heccu. Welcome back.
It's great to be back. It's great to be back. Thank you.
Right, okay. Obviously, we always have the guest start first. So what is your good point for this one, Heccu?
My good point is, I mean, the Mongols are so good, and how are they so good? Because, they come to a major, we're like, okay, we can potentially maybe pick them as our 03. Like, they're probably not going to go good, like, that far.
Yes.
They succeeded. From the recent stuff, it's like the Compass event, like the Yellow Compass, like, they've won the whole thing. Obviously, maybe there was, like, it was not the super, like, S-tier event, like, where maybe all of the teams are taking it mega serious, not the major. But still, like, the teams that they managed to beat against and, like, the performance from, like, 9-10, I need, like, an explanation from someone of, like, how did they do that? Like, how did they manage to grow in their region? Because we are not getting any information, like, what is exactly is happening there. Like, they're, like, not making, like, YouTube content. They're not writing tweets, at least none that I know about. What are they doing? And if like maybe NA can like copycat that, because somehow
Okay.
they succeed.
That's like the way she makes it sound like MongolZ is like the crashed UFO Roswell saucer, and now it's NA's job to like reverse engineer the tech Maui and figure out like how did they do it?
Exactly, because
I love it.
To me it feels like they should not
No,
really
true.
have the resources.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, what is happening there? Like, I don't know.
Okay.
Confusing. Maybe if someone like, do you guys have any kind of
Come on.
information?
Maui's got some theories. I know. Come on.
Okay, give me Maui. Give me.
I mean, just first of all, the needless shot at North America there. What did we do to deserve that? Yeah. So, I mean, the Mongols have been practicing a lot in Europe. So it's not, I think people might conflate the idea a little bit that they're just like every now and then showing up, only practicing from that region. At the very least, when they are in Mongolia, they are practicing European teams playing with 80 ping, which is like, okay, yes, 80 ping is not fun to play with in CS2 especially, but you can still absolutely run your game plans through that. And I think in some ways, I think that strengthens your abilities as a team. I think that's actually, if you're gonna have to scrim European opposition regularly with 80 ping, and you're gonna basically handicap your own mechanical ability, then you're going to have to focus so much more on the team aspect of the game, which Mongols have shown that they have ironed out quite well. And I think that that's one great thing about the Mongols is that when you watch them, it just feels so unlike everything else we had from Asian CS for such a long period of time. Think of, I think the most obvious example for people that have been watching CS for the last like 5, maybe even 10 years has been the Tai Lu roster that found a couple upset wins in CSGO, because they really did it with a lot of random play. When I would watch them, I would say, I don't think these setups are really even logical. They're just surprising. They're just kind of shocking. Whereas the Mongols, there's just a much more ironed out game plan behind them. The flow chart seems a lot more similar to European styles. And then you have people that have very defined roles. I think that that's one thing that basically their unbridled raw talent in Mousinho is just kind of playing these hard anchor positions. Kind of what it's hilariously kind of what Falcons wanted to do to Boros, where they were just like, just get in the corner. Just get in the corner. We know you're really skilled, but just sit in the corner. Just do what you're supposed to do over there. Headshot everybody. And he does. He does a good job at that. And I think for the Yala event, the big shocker was the fact that 9-10 found consistency, because he was such a streaky player before. Like, he had some insane clutches back in the day, but when the Mongols were rising up over the last year. But now it just seems like he's able to find his footing in every single game without having to have big pop-off moments necessarily. In fact, I would say that he did still have some big moments at Yala, don't get me wrong, but I think that one thing at Yala was that a few of the games went a little bit more like, oh, you just ended with 18 kills, but like I saw some of them, but I wasn't like blown away by them. Whereas before, it was all or nothing for him.
Okay, I like the theory. I will say this. I definitely agree. It certainly helps if you do like the boot camps. You can't just only, like if they really had only been in Asia and they'd come to like 3 lands or something, that would be a bit weirder. But I agree that I actually think it's a valid question, even though it sounds like a funny rhetorical one. Like, what are they actually doing? Because they must be doing something unique, I agree, to what the other people in the region are doing. It can't just only be talent. Because I actually do think if you go back to the line of Maui's referred to, that Tylo talent team, that one did have talent in. Like that somebody guy was like a talented fucking like aggressive rifler. Obviously, Ben Tech was really good. Everyone knows his skill set was legit. Like they had that summer guy who was pretty all right. I mean, depending on when you're in Asia or not. So like they had talent. The difference was though, if you remember watching that team, Maui, their actual understanding of like the meta of pro Counter-Strike was terrible though. Like my joke was the reason why actually you did want them to literally just like almost like push W religion, just rush the site, is because if they just rushed the site and overwhelmed you with like some crazy play out of nowhere, they could win the round. But if they had to go into like a slow 3v3 with a pup, then you just knew like your heart just sank. You just knew they were going to lose the round and people would like team play better than them, or they just know how to do certain things with like the timings, etc. So the difference is, I would say like MongolZ to me, it's not even just the players. Like some of the players are hype, but I'm with you. Like they have like a coherent style. Like actually one thing I'd love to know about this team is what like the relationship is with like the coaching staff, or if they have some sort of like interesting setup of how they scrim at home. Like a couple of quick things as the esports historian I'll bring up as like examples here is, if people remember back in the day when Fallen's Luminosity team first came up, I actually did an episode of Counterpoints way back where me and Moses just asked Fallen, and maybe Zeus as well, so I can't remember who was on the episode. We basically asked him like, did you do anything different in practice to like get to a high level? Because famously at the time, the number one complaint all the NA teams at Cloud9 and Team Liquid always gave was like, well, we can't be as good as Europeans because like, we can only practice each other basically, and all the other scrims are like a waste of time and people don't play properly and all this. And one of the things that was actually incredible, like legitimately, I gave them mad props for this at the time, was one of the reasons why they said they did so much theory work in Luminosity is exactly because of the scrim environment. They said, oh no, we agree, like when you play like a random NA team, like the 7th best NA team in a scrim, it's nothing really like a LAN match, so you're not really learning much like you could take in and like play at a major with. So they said, and this, if this is true, by the way, this is incredible discipline, I've never heard of this before. They said for real, what they would actually do is when they would like VOD review, they would actually encourage each other. Like when we're playing the online scrim against the NA team who's way lower level, don't do like easy things that you can do in this exact scrim that would win you the round. Like this guy fucked up and he peeked the corner when he shouldn't. Like don't just like all kill him in a normal duel, because we never have that scenario on LAN. Essentially what we'll do is we'll just like treat it as if they're playing properly, and we'll only practice like the right way theoretically that we think we'll play, which sounds really like counterintuitive, but I think it worked. Like if you think about it, that team probably had at the time the best control over the game of any team. They knew what to do in all the late round scenarios, so they had some sort of like a theory of how to like shadow box a better opponent that wasn't there in some way. And then the last example ever, just because it's an Asian one and people have been referencing it recently, is, if people don't know, the original Asian region to shock the world was Korea back in the day, because the Koreans actually at one point in time in CS 1.6 were like in major finals and stuff, and theirs is the craziest story of all time, because if people don't know the story, supposedly they for real used to practice in an empty server and just actually like dry run strats all day long, so they weren't even like practicing a live opponent, because at the time in Korea no one played Counter-Strike, and even people who did, believe it or not, like used to play a bit like Eastern Europe on like cracked version of Steam, so they didn't even play the official versions. You had nobody to play against. There was like, you know, 2 semi-pro teams you could practice against. So even though I doubt it's as extreme as this, I would actually wonder, how does MongolZ practice? Like I'd love to know, do they do lots of theory sessions? Are they actually actively working on opponents like that they're going to go and play? Do they just freestyle? Like I don't actually have the answer. I'm speculating like theories here, but I would genuinely, Heccu, it's like one of those things where like I almost feel like someone should just put like a documentary crew around MongolZ and follow them as they go to the major or something. Like, let's see what they're doing. Let's see how they're practicing.
In all honesty, I think we need to kind of like investigate of what exactly is like motivating, because like basically what Maui explained is like how exactly they got to this level, but like maybe what pushed them.
Sure.
Because coming from like a smaller region, like you can't imagine like the amount of butthurt I would get like whenever like I hear like people from the Baltic states like say, oh, you can't achieve anything here because, you know, and then there's like a list of reasons. Because like, you know, like no one ever achieved anything. We'll never have this team, blah, blah, blah. And then our breakthrough was Robs. Like when Robs got signed by Maus, literally the whole Baltic states was like, wait, that's doable?
Yes.
And like all of the excuses that they had, they could not use that anymore because Robs showed a path and an example that that's actually like doable. And since then we started like getting more and more players, because now all of the excuses that they had, they don't have them anymore. Because like Rob's showed a prime example. And with that, I wonder if maybe the same thing happened with like the Mongols, because I remember like many years ago, Machine Gun went like to US like
Oh,
to
sure.
play
Yes.
Splice.
Yeah,
I
Splice.
don't remember. In Splice, right? Maybe he kind of like with that action kind of showed an example to like people like in the Mongolia that like, hey, we can actually do this. Like, so it took away like those minuses, and all of a sudden like now they actually have like more motivation and less excuses.
Yes. By the way, two quick small things. One, I like the point you made earlier. If you want to frame how crazy the difference now is, I agree. Back in the day, if you'd have seen when we were all doing the pick'em at a major, like IHC or Mongols, by the way, any Asian region team, that would all be the team you'd all think, should I pick them as the 0-3? It was like an obvious one to pick, right? Same as now how people often hate on the bad Brazilian teams and just put them there, right? You just assume, right, if I'm going to have to be cynical. Whereas the joke now is, and this is like a pretty good analogy, if the next major started today, I'd probably actually consider this team as like my like last team to make the playoffs. Like they might even be able to do it at this point in time. Like that's like the level up we've had at this point. So I'm with you. And then also on the thing of like what was the thing about like the excuses as to why they can't make it? It is true. People always do that way. It's like until someone does it, they'll always be, it's impossible to do it. But then obviously once it's done, like suddenly it's plausible. Everyone can go and do it at that point in time. True.
Definitely.
Right. What about yours then, Maui? What is your good point?
Yeah, mine's taking from the second place finishers at Yala Compass. I didn't really want to actually focus on the whole side of NIP because I feel like I still need to see a little bit more. I'm not sure, I can't really tell yet or this early on if this is an aberration type of run, if this was almost for them what would be a fluky run to the finals. But I wanted to just talk about Wrinkle, their opper, because I think Wrinkle is the real deal. Wrinkle playing on bait before, one of the signings where if you didn't really know who he was, I wasn't too familiar with his game in all honesty because he was just playing on bait for such a long time. You would occasionally see play pretty well at say like an RMR or like a closed qualifier for the major, but they didn't really play too much in terms of tier 1 events. But now that I'm seeing him much more, I'm really starting to enjoy Wrinkle's game, especially on the T side. Wrinkle, for me, is a big reason why NIP was able to have as good of the T sides as they did. Because Wrinkle, if you look at the opening kill statistics, he's taking the most opening kills of any opper, and it's by a significant margin on the T side. The only person that has above a 20% attempt rate on the T side beyond him is Zorte with pretty much 20%, 20.5%. Whereas on the other hand, Wrinkle is taking 27% of opening attempts. And when you watch his play for NIP and you like get into what's making him so interesting is that this dude's just flat out good at moving with the op. He's good at moving and shooting. And the thing is that in CS2 right now, it feels so limited. I think one of the main mechanics of this game that to me made opping a little bit more difficult was that you feel a little bit like you're more on ice skates. There was this really stupid Scream clip where he came back from Valorant briefly and was playing a little bit of Counter-Strike 2. And he was saying the thing is in CS2, when he's playing it, it doesn't feel like when he counter strafes, he fully stops. He's like skating a little bit more. And some people were like clowning him because it's like, oh, Valorant stops for you. But it's like, no, I think that's actually a little bit of a thing. If you don't counter strafe perfectly, like people were kind of thinking, is this subtick? What is it? I'm not sure if it's the game engine or it's subtick at this point, but it does feel like you really have to consciously stop moving before you actually hit left click, which is why so many operas were so bad at moving and shooting in the beginning of the game. But Wrinkle, he's past that. Like Wrinkle can absolutely peek into angles, and the only few people that I think are that good as him is like Brokey, Zywoo, Monacy, obviously. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Wrinkle's at their level. He's has to develop a lot of other aspects of his game, but when it comes to actually just peeking into a new angle and shooting somebody on that angle, Wrinkle's insanely good. And that's one thing that's gotten me excited about NIP is that they have an opper who can play aggressively on the T side, which is going to make this team inherently fun to watch, even if you strip away all of the other aspects of this lineup. So I've got to give a big shout out to Wrinkle.
Okay. What do you think, Heccu?
I never got to interact with him, so I personally don't know him as a person. For example, when it comes to Hetrick, I really like him as like, like this like cool little kid, but unfortunately it felt like the pressure maybe in some kind of way was a bit too much. But that's maybe because at that moment he was kind of brought into like a team that had so many names and right away had maybe higher expectations than with the current NIP, because like kind of through the time the NIP maybe like status kind of like went down. So like now when he comes in, he's like, okay, now like I'm surrounded by not like super mega legends of the scene. Like maybe we can grow together, and that puts like less pressure on Wrinkle in comparison to Hetrick. Uh, Baseline is like hard for me like to compare like who's like a better at the role, just because I think this kind of pressure like can have like a huge influence on your performance. So for now, it's really hard for me to judge about him as a player and as a person, but he's showing a lot of promise from like what we're seeing.
Yeah, on this one, I'll do a little bit about Wrinkle, but I also want to make a bigger point actually about NIP since this like new regime, since the Calc guy went out and the Eric Wendell guy took over. Because when this pickup was happening, this actually is one of those ones where I had a few other like smaller coaches in the scene DM me and be like, actually, that player's probably going to be pretty good. Like a bunch of people behind the scenes say he's actually like a real prospect and he's legit. And basically, they told me crucially, it's not like the Hetrick pickup, because as we've pointed out many times on this show, the weirdest part about the origin story of Hetrick to NIP is he wasn't an opera, and then they just sold him from NAVI Academy to NIP as if he was like the Monacy at home meme or whatever. And then the problem was he not only wasn't Monacy, but like he was adjusted into the role. And you can see, if you actually watch him, because the joke is he outplays a Wrinkle spot in bait. Like he's not bad, like he's still decent, but the difference was that wasn't even where his hype was. His hype was as a rifler. This guy actually is a real opera. And by the way, I actually agree. If you just watch since he joined the team, and obviously they've gradually been making the lineup change because they only brought Isaac in recently. Like he's looked pretty promising from as soon as he stepped into NIP, actually, even though there was online games initially. Like, it actually does look like this is pretty good scouting, which is why I want to draw this into the bigger point, which is, this is where I actually feel like, literally, it's why it's a good contrast. I actually think the head trick move is why people weren't hyped about this one, because the head trick move was kind of like a weird one anyway. Like, why are you bringing a Ukrainian team into like traditionally like Swedish NIP, you know? And that one was where it was all Nordic players. It was like, what even is this mixture, basically? Unless he is Monacy, he's not going to make it. Whereas, first of all, I agree, there's no pressure in the same way now. In fact, actually, people have probably gone too far the other way, and they've set zero expectations for NIP, and they actually think it should be trash. And that's why I wanted to bring up this bigger point actually about the new regime, because I did actually, by the way, you saw if I went back and forth with that guy. I actually did reach out to that guy and do like a call with him. And I will say, behind the scenes, they actually were way better than the last NIP people and the things I'd heard about them. Like, the difference is, as far as I know, under this regime, it isn't like some calc type GM type figure, like I'm the God Emperor making all the moves. I was told, basically, it really is people like Threat and Exist, like have been empowered to make these moves and decide who gets to join the team. So actually, this isn't like someone, because if you saw those interviews I did, the reason those were infuriating was they were like a bad fucking meme about management, where it was like, you know, Hampus would be telling Calc like, hey, you know, we could just get Brolan now and then have Device and Brolan. And he was like, yeah, understood. I've got your S attack. And you were like, oh, fuck it. I said Brolan, like, you know. And so the problem is, like, those moves kill you. Whereas, based on what I've heard, first of all, I don't think they have a massive budget if you look who they're picking up. But actually, if you look at the signings, I'm not joking, these are the signings they've made since that regime took over, guys, right? They had Maxter already, but he was like a young ninja or whatever the fuck, right? That guy actually looks legit. He actually looks pretty decent, actually, considering he's a player I didn't have on the radar. The Wrinkle guy actually looks really promising. Like, he could actually be a legit, like, maybe in a year from now, he could be like a top 20 player. And then you've also got the Isaac guy, which people have just dodged that one. Dude, that makes them even a Swedish core again, which is what everyone wanted, right? Didn't we all want them to at least have the option to like flex and be in Swedish? Because the point is, now you look at the lineup now, yes, right now you're going to be an international team, but like you're only like a year away from a world where like you get the Jacob and the Brolin, and then you got like the godlike Swedish lineup again. That's even like a real possibility again for an NIP. And I actually think when you look at their squad, considering the Isaac guy actually was pretty decent, he's just more of a supportive element if people don't know. He's not like a star player. Actually, this lineup started to look pretty decent. The Alex guy, by the way, was never a bomb. It was just a weird pickup for NIP, wasn't it? You thought like, wait, Alex over Alexi B, but like, it's not a bad player. I mean, clearly he was all right in Movistar. So I actually think the lineup's not as bad as people think. I do think they'll probably get overhyped because of this Yalla Compass run. Like, they're probably not going to be like a fucking dark horse to win events, guys. Like, I even think if you go and look, like, their bracket draw was fucking ridiculous, that bottom side. Like, if anything, that's why I even joked. Like, there's a wonder, like, Fnatic could have been in the final when you look at that bracket draw. So it's probably a one-off. But I do think, like, in general, bear in mind everyone's put the expectations down to zero, I'm starting to get more interested and like, kind of a little bit hyped about NIP again. Like, put it this way, each move looks like it's going in the right direction. I feel like they're on the uptick. They're at least an interesting team to watch again. And crucially, yeah, at least this player, like, the Wrinkle guy clearly has talent. You could just go watch any of his games. He's got some skills. I'm with you. Right?
I think also,
go on.
One more thing. I think what really helps Wrinkle in this team is that his IGL is also like not Swedish. So
Sure.
maybe right now, like it's not. I'm saying what I'm gonna say is not something like confirmed, but like I can imagine a situation like with the previous roster where they had like a lot of like Swedish players and they had Hetrick. If your IGL is Swedish, and for example Hetrick maybe like dies, they might go all Swedish.
Yeah, of course.
And even though like obviously that makes sense because that is
Yes.
that helps to get a better result. But to Hetrick, he might feel a bit like more isolated. Like he's sitting there and just listening to something that he doesn't know. Maybe
Sure.
doesn't like get to observe, like, and also like, learn on the run because like now they are going to into this like state. With Alex, since he is the IGL, so most of the communication is happening through him. So it is gonna be in English. So like in any scenario, like Wrinkle will be able to get the information, like at least like learn it, or like we get the confirmation. Like he'll feel like maybe less left out.
Yes. I will say, even though in those teams, like same as when Big goes speaking English, well, there's like 3 or 4 players are German. That's one thing I always do wonder about. People just don't mention it because it's awkward. It's like, yeah, obviously you speak in English when the guy who in the team who like Mantu's there or whatever. But I have always thought they make it sound like it's a positive. Like, yeah, but after that in a 2v2 we can just speak German. I think imagine how isolating it must be being that guy. They're like, yeah, guys, get him. Like, you don't have any clue what anyone's saying in that round. Like, you have no idea what info they're giving or anything. You just feel it the whole time. Like, shit, when they're just going to replace me and speak this language without me. Like, that's in the back of your... I'm with you. The IGL's a pretty good role to... As long as he's there, you're safe, aren't you? Exactly. Basically, if you're Wrinkle, what you have to do is... Alex is like that principle where, you know that thing they say, Maui, where they say you don't actually have to survive in Africa, be faster than a lion. You just have to be with someone who's not as fast as a lion. As long as you're faster than him, you're okay. He'll get killed first. So if you're Wrinkle, only worry if Alex gets replaced and they're like, oh, we brought in Golden. Like that, shit your pants then, mate. But as long as Alex is there, you're safe. In fact, every day I'd be DMing Alex, how's it going? It's still... Things are looking up.
Good.
Yeah, everything going great with the coaches. Listen, I want to be a good teammate. Let me know how things are going, right? Okay, let's move on. Because I've got my good point. And it's actually a rare example of where I'm not going to do something super specific. I've got quite an abstract one here, which is I actually am... It's funny, I see a lot of negativity around the top teams and everyone doing the usual thing where if Vitality lose, they suck and they have to make 50 cards. I don't know why, by the way. They're in every fucking semi-final and final. If FaZe Clan doesn't make the final, like abandon all hope, they must be bombs now. If Spirit loses, fuck, they should cut all these players. I'm going the other way. I actually think right now, CS is mega fucking hype at all the tournaments because there is no clear-cut number one in the world. But it's not like every team sucks. Yeah, each team has like a different weird flaw. Like, for example, Mouse has never really done it on the big stage, even though they're, you know, on paper they're our number one. FaZe Clan, they haven't been in a few finals now. Vitality hasn't won in forever, even though Zebu's super cracked. Like, G2 won, but like in such weird circumstances, it doesn't even feel like they're number one. I actually think the cool thing right now is if you were to make a tournament, obviously Clone's coming up not too long. By the way, Blast actually has all the top teams. If you make a tournament that has the top 4 to 5 teams in, nobody can say who's going to win right now. I actually think it's mega hype. Like, I think it's really exciting. And I also think if you're a star player like the Donk, Monacy, Zebu triumvirate, where we're all trying to see the battle for world number one, it's even better because if you just actually frag out, you can decide who the top team is. You can decide who gets to be number one this year. It's not like that. Like, it's not like Vitality's like Astralis 2018, and if you're Monacy, it's like, oh, bad luck, you know, you just can't win the tournament. Like, everyone who's in the top teams can feel fucking super hyped right now. It's actually making it so that, in my opinion, that's why even though like Yola Compass isn't the biggest event, everyone wanted to see Astralis, but was Astralis going to win the tournament? Were they going to fucking dust everyone off? So I think right now it's actually really exciting. So yes, what thoughts, guys? Rare bit of optimism. Anyone thought?
I feel like one thing that's been kind of plaguing the space for some time is I'm thinking like maybe even just like a year ago and before that, you see these pretty much like fatal flaws in some of the top teams, whereas now I'd say the flaws are much more subdued. Like, for example, one of the biggest and most fatal flaws we see in any of the top lineups is Hooksy on G2. It's like they probably could have a higher ceiling if it weren't Hooksy, but I'm not gonna say he's like an absolute bum. Like,
I like the way we got 24 minutes into the episode till the bingo card was completed because the middle square is always Hooksy blamed for some reason. So okay, Mal, keep going.
Yeah. But I look at, for example, I mean, you look at Vitality, and it's like you're not going to tell me that any of these players are just garbage. Like Mezzi had a huge pop off recently himself at Dallas. I'd say that they still have arguably top, I mean, pretty, not even arguably, an easily top 3 player in the world.
Yes.
You look at FaZe, and it's like this team practically has no flaw. Like there's pretty much no obvious flaw on FaZe whatsoever. Like people can try to point the finger at a couple different directions on that team, but it's like before we always used to have such an obvious problem on the team. It's like, oh, they just like this Kenny S. Shocks thing is just coming together. It's okay, you know. It's like, and then it's like when I look back at teams in like 2019 or whatever, like it felt like such a golden era. But then it's like, well, when I really think about it, I do remember a lot of the huge flaws with some of these rosters that made it so that they couldn't beat the indomitable Astralis. Okay, so but now it's like, no, I see Vitality, I see Spirit, I see Maus, I see FaZe, and I'm like, I mean, all of these teams should have chances to win every event that they play in. G2, obviously, I just mentioned the one, and then I mean, I think that's a very good position for Counter-Strike to be in or top level CS at least, as opposed to they're just playing with bolts right now because they can't find a better fifth, you know, like which was always the case with old rosters in like the 2010s.
I think for me, just I like variety. I like when it changes. I like this mix of like you have like a period when no one is top 1, and then like Sound has like maybe an era, but like a small one. Maybe not the Astralis one, because maybe obviously it's amazing for the storyline because we can now like for like 15 more years keep on talking about like the legendary Astralis, unstoppable, full mages, all of that. Yeah, but I personally prefer like when there's a lot of chaos, you're sitting and guessing who's gonna win, but then at some point I kind of get tired of like, you know, like I'm tired of guessing, just tell me who's winning. Then like you get like that period of okay, FaZe Clan is starting their like micro era, you're like, okay, FaZe Clan, and then they go down and like, oh, okay, and there's again like
you like both, you like to go through the cycle of it, right? I see.
Exactly. So the cycle, so like right now, like I'm really enjoying that, like we are at this moment where no one is like number 1, and the same goes also for the players, because like for such a really long time, like top 1 and top 2 was like, okay, s1mple level, who's just gonna be like number 1? That was the only question, and then the rest. Now like this year, okay, actually like sounds like maybe starting from like last year, it was like, oh, okay, we're not sure about maybe like the number 2, and now it's like now we're not sure about the number 1. So that adds a little bit like of more variety. So that's kind of reason like why I enjoy this like moment right now.
Sure.
But probably at some point like I want like us to have like again like someone like number 1 for a bit, but then for them to go down and again like have chaos, and then we randomly pick out like, okay, now you're number 1, and then he goes back down like again like you mix it like now you're number 1. Obviously, we're not the ones who picked them.
Sure.
It's them. They somehow like break the code, and then either like the rest of the teams like follow them, or they break and fall back down. So yeah, I kind of like this like change.
By the way, Maui, I've just realised, imagine being Huxley, seeing all these shows and just being like, so wait a minute, when I did win all the biggest tournaments in the world, you were all just like, yeah, but the top end of the scene was sort of shit, so does it really count? And now, like, a stand-in wins an event that's not even a prestige event, it's just like a good event. And now you're all like, yeah, but the scene's really good though right now, though. So these results are all great though. It's like, he can't win, can he? He can't ever fucking win, mate. I know. I feel bad for the guy almost. But then I just remember he gets paid more money than God and has money on his team. So I go, you know what? I can reserve feeling bad for you, actually. Right, okay. What is your bad point then, Heccu? This is a spicy one, actually, so come and hit me with it.
Okay.
She brought some flame. Get ready. Come on.
Into the breach building around smooya. And maybe it's
okay.
I don't know.
Okay,
it's
come
like,
on.
Okay, let me make it clear. I think like whenever like I see like smooya participating in different like podcasts and stuff like that, like he's really entertaining.
Yeah.
It's really like fun to watch him like do content, like leaking content, like that is
disclaimers.
Content.
I'm already so hyped because of the disclaimer alone. Keep going.
Right, but like right now they're gonna like build around smooya, and I don't know him personally, but I have not heard good things about smooya from anyone. And that is my biggest concern. It's like usually it's like, okay, you have like people, you have like one person that where people like a lot of like saying good things and some bad things, and like there's 50-50.
Yeah.
But when it's like a situation where like I'm going to like a local LAN and there's like a like a lower tier caster for like from UK, and like I asked them like about their scene. They're like, yeah, but smooya. And like when you see like that face, you're like, what is happening there? Like, and just like why I wonder like why exactly did they decide to build? Because okay, smooya is like relatively good as a
Yeah,
player. He's good,
sure.
but that is not the problem for him. Is not that it's not his skill, right? It's maybe like the attitude, the way how he behaves with people. It's like it's a maybe a bit too spicy for like for a team. So I wonder like when they bring in smooya, if this is like they actually full on believe that they'll be able to successfully build around him and there'll be like no problems, or if this is maybe in a way of let's make people talk about us, like bad publicity is good publicity. Let's just get like people talk about into the breach, and then eventually maybe they'll change him out. I, like I don't know, like I'm so confused with it.
Thoughts, Maui?
I think Into the Breach is just uh, the fact that they actually made top 8 of the major with the
It's
lineup
mad,
that they
isn't
put
it?
forward. It's just sent us on this ridiculous timeline that I feel like we mostly got off of it, but smooya now being the centerpiece, the keystone of this Into the Breach lineup is just ridiculous. I mean, he's shown no leadership qualities whatsoever. He's shown that he can be he can basically be detrimental to your brand image overall when it comes to everything that everybody said about him behind the scenes. Again, like nothing incredibly positive. Like great to have a person like smooya in the space because he's kind of like a walking, talking news story himself. Like he's a headline, and so I will be interested in seeing what kind of mishaps unfold. It's like I'm more there for the Into the Breach sitcom as it's going to progress than I am actually to see what that team is going to legitimately do in the server.
Like, here's the problem: if it was even just the reputation of something, from past years and like years and years ago with like the drama refresh or whatever back, or when he was on Big Clan, that'd be so many years ago. I could just say, hey, think times change. Give him time. He's more experienced. But like the most recent drama was a Pro League, guys, like a month ago or something mad. Like, and it wasn't just like he didn't like accidentally like, oh sorry, did I say that in World Series instead of to my team? Like the guy's like. To be polite, he's at best like incredibly socially misaligned, and that's being polite. I'd just call him an idiot personally. Like I think I think there's no like when you or I have a thought and our brain goes evaluate. Should I say that thought or change? I don't think any of that. I don't think that guy is there. I think smooya just goes. Oh, it's coming out. Just comes straight. The thought just pops up and comes straight out the tube and out of the mouth. And they go. He's not even aware there is a guy that can go. Whoa. Think about it. Like that doesn't happen. So the problem I have is I sort of agree. It's not even, by the way, like that. You can't have a play like that. You can have a player be spicy like that. And obviously, as you say, for entertainment factor, it is fabulous. Like everyone enjoys that aspect. The problem becomes, though, I think the crucial point of how you framed it is, this is the only player in the team at the moment, guys. Like, if it was like, right, well, we built this whole team. In fact, you know what? We've even sort of smooya proofed it. We've picked like an IGL with like really strong mental, We've got like a bunch of veterans. We've got some. The joke is, I mean, he already did do this. It didn't work. But let's say you had someone like a Crims, some mega veteran who probably wouldn't get as bothered by it. You hope and they just play out, You could make a team where smooya could be like the last piece and you need a bit of firepower, maybe some like aggressive AWPer, and then that team might make sense. It's the idea though, you're essentially just saying, like we're saying, like, the only person we're committed to is smooya right now. He is the future. Everything will be built around smooya. It's like, we even have a saying in English, like you're just like building your fucking house on the sand, aren't you? Like the second the wave comes in, in this case, he just has an intrusive thought. It's over. He's just going to say it, isn't he? Like, Maui, this is where I have leveled my actual social media game up. Believe it or not, this is where, unlike smooya, I do have that guy now who sometimes goes, think about it. That is a funny tweet, but it might end everything. And then every now and then I go, well, all I'll say is this, guys. If I ever get hacked or die, someone in my family, you have the permission to release all the drafts. Because I'll tell you what, my drafts folder is straight fire. It's got some bangers in, but it's got all the shit I don't put on that. It's essentially, there used to be a drafts folder. So the drafts folder is sort of saving my arse. So not only one needs a drafts folder, but two, I had one I thought about doing right after that fucking drama with Monty. But I just thought, even though this is really funny, the potential for this to go wrong is too much. So basically a thought smooya never had. So what I thought was, the obvious joke was, it's just a shame for smooya, there are no Palestinian teams. Otherwise he could just join an Israeli team tomorrow, couldn't he? That's the obvious fucking joke, isn't it? Because it's like, bro, you're a recipe for disaster. Like, whatever angle you walk into, I'm just like, the joke now is you'll just join like a fucking Irish team and start saying all stuff about fucking England all the time and get in trouble with that, like some old fucking drama. So the one problem is this. I actually agree. Skill-wise, by the way, he more than could be in a team like Into the Breach. In fact, the saddest thing about Smooya's career is he probably has, at this point, because he's an older guy as well, he's not 18 anymore, he probably has hard capped himself because of all the drama from ever getting to the level he's actually qualified to play at. Like, the actual sad thing is, he is good enough to be in a team like fucking Fours. He probably can be. That's exactly about the level I think he probably should be on. So the only problem is, I get the way Into the Breach are doing it because obviously their main angle, like they haven't been a big team like Mauisnake since that Blast Paris run. Their main angle is the British angle, right? Well, if you're going to do we're flexing on being British, yeah, Smooya probably is the player to sign because like Messi already plays in fucking Vitality and then Alex just isn't ever coming back, mate. Like, he's gone. That ship's fucking sailed. So I don't hate the branding angle, but I agree. I don't really know like where the angle of the team's going. I'll even just see this right now. It's not even like the drama is like Smooya will attack the team with just... I'll tell you another obvious one to me. Has Smooya ever shown any context that he's a loyal player? Like, I'll tell you right now, you might sign him thinking, hey, we're British org and he's a British player. If Smooya gets the call up to go to a team that's better than this team in like a year, he's going tomorrow. What are we talking about? Like, in his career, he has shown he will clan hop all over the place. If people don't remember, there's that story where the way he left Big Clan was mental. Like, they were having some sort of issues with him internally, but I think they like wanted him to not up. And he just like benched himself a month before the major. Does no one remember that story? Like, he benched himself. He was just basically, oh, right, if I can't do my role, I'm out then. It's like, so I also worry that, like, I don't even know what future this project has. Like, either you're just irrelevant, you have Smooya, or surely you get decent. And in a way, it's like a good problem to have. But if you get too good, won't he just go and join a better team? Won't he just join Gamer Legion or something? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really feel like he's like super duper loyal in that regard. And then lastly, I do think somehow, look, I will say the one thing that does have me hyped is I can't predict yet how Heccu. I don't know what drama he will get involved in. But he definitely will. I'm just waiting to see what the drama will be. So, in a fucked up way, I hope they do actually go to land, so like get into all these tournaments and start playing, because it'll just generate itself. It will be box office. I'll give you that. It'll be box office.
It's going to be entertaining.
Okay. By the way, don't worry, Maui. There's more spicy takes coming. She's actually come with some fucking heat rocks here. So, okay, let's go to yours, though. What is your bad take, Maui?
Mine is just the fact that anybody that says that Navi's run was a fluke at the major, that's just aged like fine wine at this point. Like, it's been pretty depressing to watch Navi ever since then. And mostly I'm referring to what they did at Dallas, losing to Heroic with a stand-in of Nikodas. Like, that's just pathetic for a team that's supposed to be that's supposed to actually be building off of a world championship, which is kind of backwards, by the way. You're supposed to build up to a world championship. You're not supposed to actually win the world championship first and then try to see what did we do that was working there, because this team has just such an inability to coast through games because there's no star player on this roster. Like anybody that labeled anybody prematurely as like a star, superstar, all-star, like whatever, there's no player like that on Navi. Like let's just be real for a second. Like Wonderful is good. He's a solid opper. He has an inability to take over games. Alexi B, I think per role probably is actually the strongest, but that's not really how you win tier 1 Counter-Strike games, by having a top tier, like an S tier IGL. You do it by having a handful of A tier players. And I couldn't even really reliably say that anybody on Navi is like an A plus tier player. Like I'd say maybe like Wonderful and JL are like in the A tier of their role right now, but like they're not knocking at the door of S tier for me. And that's where they fall behind. When they lost to Heroic, I saw fights being taken in so many different positions across the map, and it was so frequent that just like Bit would lose a fight, Wonderful would miss a shot, then like JL would have to make an aggressive push by himself and try to make something happen. And it's like, guys, like, you're supposed to win these fights if you're a major winning team. You're just supposed to win a little bit more, because you can't always beat everybody through the sheer teamwork and game planning that Blade and Alexi crafted together in the laboratory in the night before. Like, sometimes it just relies on these individuals having multi-frag moments because they're supposed to lock down their positions, and when they don't, then their team looks quite fraudulent. And per the results that have occurred since the major, they practically have been fraudulent. Like, that major run at this point, I look back at some of the ways that they were actually able to get into the games, and oh my god, those T sides just worked way better than they were supposed to. The fact that literally Ema could walk through a smoke when JL decides to make a push by himself, and it's like they're just finding ways to find perfect flank timings. The mid round is perfect on top of that, and then you have this random clutch out of nowhere, like a 1v2 from Bit or something like that. Like there's all these moments that's just like everything that could have possibly gone their way went their way, and it's just not now. It's just not. Like that was a fairy tale in a weird way. That was a fairy tale run for an org that is as storied as Navi, because you look at the people on paper, and it's like if you stripped away the Navi banner from this team, I would say like if you told me that was like some iteration of like Fnatic recently or something, I'd be like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. Or like NIP or whatever. I'd be like, yeah, I don't really. The main difference maker here is that you have Alexi and then you have Blaze the coach. And if you just put those other 4 people with like, imagine that team with Coach Alex, or not coach, like the player, like the IGL is Alex, and then the coaches like exist. You'd be like, I mean, maybe they're a top 15 team, but they're not a team that's going to win a major.
Yeah.
With their roster, I wonder what is their like maybe mental state position at the moment, because I can imagine like before the major, before getting the title, first of all, they had this like big question mark: can we actually work without s1mple? Like, is that like even like an option? Probably during IM Sydney, they saw an example like, hey, all of a sudden we had to play with Blade and still sort of worked out, and that was kind of like a motivation for them to actually keep on trying to do this without s1mple, and then like they win the major. It feels like really like going to the major, a lot of them felt a lot of things like all of them need to prove something, right? Because like for like Alex CB, like with his like he's like whole like OG story with his like G2 story that like never like like could like kind of prove the legitimacy. So he had that motivation. It's like, okay, I have another chance. People usually don't get so many chances. Like I really got like should like not fuck it up. And then you have, for example, Wonderful that got kicked like from Spirit. Maybe had that feeling like, oh, maybe I got overhyped. He also had this like feeling of like I need to prove. The same maybe goes like for Ima, the same goes for JL. Like all of them felt like, okay, maybe like the previous majors something that like we were lucky, but now we actually need to prove that we are legit. So maybe they had that like extra motivation and something that was like pushing them. Now they got the title, and maybe now they are like relaxing in that kind of way. There's like they don't have that mental boot that keeps on kicking them in the ass. That's like, you gotta do it, like gotta take another round. I know, gotta take another map, gotta take this, because now they're a bit more relaxed because that like inner saboteur that they had like kind of calmed down. But sometimes that is actually what you kind of need to have in order to get better. Kind of like being confident is great, but then like it might stop you from developing in kind of way. And they had this thing that was motivating them like to improve and to adjust, and maybe now like they calm down a bit. Maybe now they need to go like a bit down in order to again like to get that mental boot for it like to start kicking their ass. And there's gonna be, I don't know, a Navi era, who knows.
Obviously, since in theory the major, the World Championship, is like the ultimate goal, it can never really be like a bad thing to win the major. But I do think for both fans and Navi themselves, it has actually messed up a lot of like the characterization. Because if you just look at the run of this team since they got Wonderful, which if people don't know, I believe it was on like Blast Fall last year. So it was like they played those 2 Blast tournaments and then they had all of the tournaments this year. So they've had quite a few events now. If you just go and look at the results and how they play, if you just take the major out, it actually all makes sense. Like the major was the outlier. That was the one event where somehow they came through and they did win and they got all the big wins they needed over the top teams. Before that, I mean, the irony is they were actually arguably better before the major than they were post the major. Like before the major, they were sort of like a dark horse team that would like, it'd be really hard. It'd take like 3-4 maps, but they had like a chance to beat a G2 or something like that. They could maybe like sometimes get the upset and then you'd expect them to go to like the semis max, for example. If you look at that team, that's not a bad team to have. I mean, still, in theory, they're not that far from that team now. They just lose a bit earlier on one, and they lose to a slightly lower level of opposition. So the problem I have is there's two parts. One, I think the major made fans, actually, especially because a lot of fans went against the fluke narrative, a lot of fans then did set them like, right, you're supposed to be the number one team now, like you should win all these tournaments. In fact, like you're saying, shouldn't it be the beginning of the NAVI era if they're actually like a great team? And then I also think actually for the players and the team, it put them in their really tough spot, because if people don't know, guys, I'll read between the lines for you. This is pure speculation, but this is how you read between the lines. The fact that s1mple was at that major and that he was it. You remember how weird those scenes were, where when they were like greeting players before and after the final, he would like talk to certain players and greet them, and then certain players he wouldn't even talk to. It's implied to me that if they bombed that major, s1mple probably just come right back in the lineup. I think that's what was going to happen. I think what would happen is if they'd have lost, like for example, the most obvious one is if they just lost immediately to Eternal Fire. By the way, it could have happened. It was a close game. If they'd have just lost in the quarterfinals and they'd never really accomplished anything as a lineup, I don't think at that point in time, by the way, there would even be any drama about if you just announced s1mple. Sure, s1mple hadn't played. He had that one bullshit, spring showdown for Falcons. But I think what would happen is everyone would say, well, Navi's not really that exciting a prospect. So you'd kind of say, well, we'll take the loss of like him working his level back up again to bring him back in the lineup. Like let's have a chance to be a great team again. The problem I think you have now is this. Even though everyone focuses on the Imma angle, as Maui pointed out, dude, there's problems all up and down this team. Like realistically, aside from Alexi B, and then when he's on his game gel, all these players have their own different reasons as to why, like, they're not necessarily the best. Like, look, I obviously wouldn't cut Wonderful. I feel like he's pretty good. But you look like the obvious ones, like Imma, yes, clearly has his issues. But I think the other one is Bit. If you go and look, Bit had an amazing Pro League. So he did follow up on the grand final. Pro League, by the way, looked super great. He's just, if you saw Dallas, he was right back to normal. He was just back. He just regressed right back to the mean again. And the problem you have here is this. If you wanted to kick Bit, that was possible if you didn't win the major, right? How are you going to pick your only legacy player and who's now won a major in CSGO and CS? How are you going to kick that player? At this point, you'd have to play really bad before you can even consider it in your team. So at this point, I actually feel like, for real, like it. First of all, it sucks if you're Imma because like you've just got a massive target paint on your back. But I actually think as a team in general, like right now, they also look kind of toothless as well. Like if you would have thrown, if the major started tomorrow, no one would pick this team to win. I don't think even they would believe they'd win, if you know what I mean. So actually, in theory, we can lead into my point now because mine's actually next. It's along these lines. So even though it doesn't have to connect directly, it doesn't have to be a Navi, I did pick as my bad point that s1mple doesn't compete in CS2. Because I wasn't thinking about it from a Navi context, because I mean, I knew Navi, whether they bring him in or not, it's up to them. But I'd put it this way. As we're having this awesome discussion that we're now able to have every event, this is actually cool, by the way. This isn't a bullshit like sports ball, like ESPN take. I think every single event, we do need to have an update on the conversation. Who is the best player in CS? And what's brilliant is we have got, is it Donk? Is it z1mple? Is it MongolZ? And what's great is each event's results can add like a bit more data so we can all look at it and argue all the angles. But also, they're all such brilliant players. And crucially, their teams, at least if G2 actually can get to semis and final, give them a chance to be the best player, like I said before. If all three teams are capable of making the final, then it's just up to the player. If you're the best, show me, show that you're the best. When I see those three names in this amazing like battle we're going to have, I just think to myself, bro, imagine if s1mple actually came back and was in a team and like, look, he wouldn't have time to be number one for this year, but imagine he was actually battling these guys. Imagine every game you got to the playoffs, it was like, oh, fuck, it's first of all z1mple against s1mple and then MongolZ against, like, that would be the shit. That would just take it to an even another level. So even though right now, no one really knows, like, is he waiting for Navi to bring him back? Is another team ever going to sign him? Right now, it's actually, this is why I put it as a bad point. The longer we wait, the more I feel like it's not happening this year. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, the major's not that far away now. If he was going to play, he'd have to come back pretty soon, especially if he's going to like get his level up again and go through all the losses and play all the lands. So I just think if you look at the circumstances, I think if you could, even just for like the wrestling angle of the name, he doesn't even have to be s1mple. But if you just put that name in the server, how much more exciting do these playoffs get, you know? And by the way, if you're these players, like if I'm honestly, I want to beat fucking s1mple and show I'm better than him now. Like he had his period when he was the best and I was coming up. Like fucking get in the server. Let's see who the best is. So I think it's just a shame that s1mple doesn't compete. He just sat on the fucking sidelines, isn't he? Getting flamed by Maui. It's the way Maui's also, because s1mple apologised to me. Now Maui's also, in many ways, he's my protege. He's also inherited my beef with s1mple. Now I'm just going to ride that one to the ends of the earth. Okay.
It runs in the genes.
At least s1mple's like, I don't want to say the word scamming because his product's not a scam. At least he's actually gaining some income because some people are buying the s1mple course. That thing is abominable. I mean, that thing is It's abhorrent. It's really bad. But either way, yeah, no, like I mean, if he were actually competing right now, it'd be mad interesting because right now, yeah, the race to #1 is probably one of the best narratives that we've got for quite some time actually in the Counter-Strike space. The fact that it's a 3-horse race, whereas almost always it's been 2 for the last I want to say 5 years or so, at least 2020 and on. And so now. And now with s1mple not playing, the one thing that I also really dislike is that his like s1mple was incredible because he was also playing a lot. Like it's a lot harder to maintain your individual ability if you are just playing FPL games. And yes, I understand that like that you are playing against the best players in the world there, but getting true real reps in against other teams who are playing real strategies out in actual matches has so much more value as an individual than just playing FPL games where, they might throw like half of an execute and then they might just run out at you and you just have to test your individual ability versus a half-baked exec. So I want to see s1mple back in the server because another thing is that the last thing I want s1mple to be in this space is to be a personality streamer talent. Like he is fairly interesting, but like obviously his greatest contribution to this space is when his ass is in that server and he's just blowing people's heads off and doing things that nobody thought was even possible in the game. I'm not seeing those moments. I like m0NESY is doing his best attempt at it right now in terms of like breaking the game and showing us what is truly possible. But s1mple had that level of creativity to himself also, where he was doing so much outside the box, then other people would try to imitate it and then they would just fail. And then you're like, you could say like, this is the difference between people like s1mple and m0NESY and people like Wrinkle, who hopefully can still have a great career. But I'm just saying he ain't him yet.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, I long for the day that s1mple can enter his name back into the conversation for the greatest player. Because at the same time, what's really disappointing is that, and also why so many people are just such fair weathered fans, is that the amount of people that were saying that s1mple's just a bum, that even when he was playing with Falcons or whatever, it's just like he didn't even carry. It's like he didn't even play the off. It was s1mple on the off. Like he didn't even get his role, and also he's playing as a stand-in. So why are we being that hard on him there? And it's like, I don't want s1mple to. The best thing that he has to do with his time is talk about me on his stream for 3 days straight because I criticized his play like s1mple course one time on Twitter. Like you have so many better things to do with your life, but you're just frustrated right now because you're not playing instead of Ema.
You say that, but low key, it does like literally excite you when you hear that he's talking shit about you on stream. I admit it does. True.
People were just sending me clips of him talking shit about me for 3 days straight from 3 different streams, and I'm like,
I'll bet you opened those clips so fast it was insane. I bet you like the fastest double click of all time, didn't you? Come on.
The third one, I'm like, come on, not like, okay, 2 days in a row, yes, but the third day, I'm like,
okay,
surely you have some other enemy to get beef with. Sure.
By the way, what was his angle? Was it just like you're an idiot as well? What was his angle as to what he said about you? Did he have some good banter or anything?
Okay. So the first thing he said was that I'm too young to understand the game. That's like literally s1mple. I am older than you. That's fine though. The next thing is that someone.
I love it. Okay.
The next thing is that someone translated.
He actually literally low broad you, even though you're actually like what, like 7 years older than us. Like, okay.
And also he's like, by the way, Snappy apologized to me. So because Snappy apologized to me, I was correct. And I'm like, s1mple, that's him being a good teammate in the moment. Like it's like if you're ever in a relationship, sometimes you just say sorry. Even if you know you're not wrong, you're just like, let's just move on. I'll just say sorry. I'm not gonna prove my case that yes, s1mple, I should have crouched for 5 seconds longer so that we couldn't get ran over.
Your analogy is that s1mple's like the high maintenance girlfriend that you have to, even if she's wrong, you have to apologize to her. It's like, well, see, at least you apologize. Okay, fair enough. Okay,
yes, exactly.
It makes sense. I get you. Okay.
And another thing was that he was like saying he said some other stuff in Russian. Apparently, people translated this for me, so I'm not like 100% on it. People like by day 3, s1mple was like, and he just laughs like a fucking monkey or something like that. I'm like, okay, we're just going for like lowbrow insults at this point.
I just like the way on some like Drake, Kendrick Lamar, it's like that's what the ghostwriters are coming up with by day 3. Like, yeah, his laugh is shit as well. Like, fucking hell, mate. Like, he's too young. He's I love it.
He's too young. Snappy apologized to me and then also that he laughs like a monkey. Yeah, those were the 3 key points.
Okay.
Good arguments. Sounds like very good arguments.
Pretty banter. It's pretty banter. I can't lie.
For me, when it comes to s1mple, the biggest question mark is because like right? Before the break, we knew like where his level was. He was the best, right?
Sure.
But now so much time passed that it literally can be sort of like, okay, there's like a specific threshold where it's like it's not below this, but like it can be anywhere.
Yes.
And after taking such a like long break, I can recall only one player actually coming back and being like good, because in most cases players take break, like they're at the top for some reason, they take a break, they come back, and they're absolutely not on that level. Not it can be a mix of like them not playing, or maybe them just like not playing competitively, so like they're not adapting to the new things. The only player that I can recall right now is Device. He took like a long break.
Yes.
And it's like there was like this whole conversation like, Device is coming back. He's probably not gonna be the same Device as he like was before he left. And blah, blah, blah. He comes over, he proves us wrong, and we're like, we have doubts, no doubts anymore. Device, good job. Right now, I have this kind of situation with s1mple. If he comes back and again he's like the GOAT, he's number one, I'll be like, s1mple, that's impressive, because so far I personally can recall only one person who managed to succeed at, because there's like hundreds of people who tried to do that and did not. Obviously, if he does succeed with that, like an absolute GOAT, like, but it's a matter of time, like if he actually comes back and manages like to prove that, like, yes, he is still like on that level, and doesn't matter if he's like taking like a 1 week break, if he's taking like 1 month break, a half a year or a year, he's still like he's like so good that it will take, I don't know, like years and years for him to act, like somehow like to lose that skill.
That's also one thing I do actually worry a little bit about. One is, like I say, aside from the obvious NAVI angle that they have him under contract, if they decided to make a change, they could obviously bring him in tomorrow and put him in whatever role they wanted, quite frankly. But assuming they don't do it, the other reason I do worry as well is I actually feel like if you're s1mple, because if remember the thing about him that's so crazy is he wasn't just the best, he was the best for like a really long time, and he just consistently did it. So I always thought as well, like people know he is a very high maintenance player, like he's a player who does flame people and have very strong opinions about what he wants to do. Well, the problem is that works when you are like not just the best, but like the best player ever. People will make all sorts of accommodations for you when you're that player. The real problem I have is the reason why he has to come back soon is, like you saw from the showdown, he's probably going to have to work his way back into form and being a good player. He's not going to enter the server as like the best player probably on any team. He's going to have to get his level up. Well, the other thing I do worry about is both for his team and for himself. I don't know how s1mple would handle being like the 23rd best player in the world. It sounds like a silly thing to say because 23rd best is pretty good, right? Yeah, but he's used to being like, remember, like the joke of that last year was even when he didn't play for the last like 4 months, people were still like, should probably still be top 10 of in the whole year though. The guy doesn't even have to play the whole year and we all know he's top 10. So like, if he comes back and he's like just good, I wonder actually what that does to his fucking sense of self, what it would do in his teams. Like, would people not put up with how he behaves? Would they not give him his spots? Can he not make the same call? Who the fuck knows? So that's why I actually just hope this just gets resolved one way or another, whether it's in NAVI or a different team. I just want him to come back and start playing. And as I said on that last part, in a weird way, it's actually the reason, Maui, why I actually do hate that American sports narrative that if you're on top, you should try and like retire, like winning the championship or whatever. I've always thought actually the cooler thing for the narrative part of esports and sports is if you're s1mple, in a way, I actually want you to play it a couple of years after your prime, so that, like I say, people like the Mauisnakes and Donks get to like, as like in the wrestling sense, like you put them over, as it were. It's like UFC. You don't want like the champion to just retire, like, oh well, I won a lot and retire. You want like the contender to beat him, and then the contender gets to build his name, and then you gradually go out, and we all, you're a legend, Hall of Fame, all that stuff. But you kind of like in the same way as when you're coming up, you beat the old legends of your day. You want to kind of like give that to the next generation. So that's why I also say, crucially in the context of this discussion of like Donk, Mauisnake, like I want to see them actually like take it to s1mple. I want to see s1mple properly play, put in the hours, no excuses, and at that point we could just play the game and see who's the best. And that would be fucking dope. Right, let's move on then, because now there is one where I'm really interested to see where she's going to go on this one, because all I'm going to say is this. Everyone has their own biases. We all have our own biases. Obviously, Maui tried to pretend that floppy guy was good for about 2.5 years. I am known to, be biased towards people like s1mple and Device, massive homer. Obviously they're not that good, are they? And Heccu's from Latvia. So let's see on your ugly point where you are going with this one. What is your ugly point, Heccu? Hit me with it.
I'm gonna talk about Liquid.
Oh God, why would you do that? Why on earth of all the times, why would you do that? Come on, here, what's the angle? 'Cause it's ugly, crucially. It's not bad, it's ugly for this one. So what's ugly?
It's ugly because I can't. Okay, listen. when the roster was announced, I was like, this is the shit. This is what
Yeah.
we needed. Like, right? Like, NA is like struggling with oppers. The NA is struggling with IGLs. On paper, it was like Cadian is exactly what that team needs. Like, on paper, it looked absolutely amazing. And then we started getting those videos of them, like, you know, like team bonding, like doing all things. I was like, okay, they have like all of the positions, all good. They have, it seems like they're bonding, everything is great. But then like we don't see the results. And I was like sitting, I was like, you know, like looking at the data that I thought is enough, like to be like, but like I was like, why is it not working out? And now like I'm sitting and I kind of have this like realization because, for example, first of all, gonna a disclaimer, I think all of them are really good players, right?
Okay.
Still like maybe
Okay.
maybe now with the results, I know I might be a biased Latvian.
It's all good.
I know,
It's all
I
good.
think I'm still like they're still good players, right?
In your heart of
But-
hearts, you still believe they're good. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, but the thing is, it's like, do they have the same goal? Obviously, they have the same goal of winning titles, winning tournaments, being the best team. Like, let's start maybe like with an A, and then being the best team like in the world. All those things. Like the goal is the same, but the way how they would usually grow and take that path is really different for like a lot of those players. And I think like the prime example, like when it comes to Cadian, he would kind of like he really succeeded with heroic because he kind of took like players that no one like really knew about, and in a way he kind of, you can kind of say like he created a cult where he's like, okay guys, just believe me. And he succeeded with that. Like with that, like all of them were like on the same page. They would just like blindly just follow. Because the thing is, and I think like that is why maybe Katie like struggled previously like, with some other wrestlers. Like people would not fully trust in him. Like they would not, because in 2021 at the Stockholm major after party, like it was like, you know, like I was not yet in the scene, but like I got an opportunity to ask a few questions to Kate, and I was like, you know, like, what is your success as an IGL? And back then he said like, well, the thing is, right now the teammates that I have is if I tell them to jump, they jump. And I feel this is the problem that maybe like Liquid is having right now, is like the pieces that they have are absolutely amazing. And while like some of them might say like if Kaden says like jump, they will jump, and some pieces might be like I will jump, but explain me why. And that's where this like, if you are trying to get to your destination like for like this like maybe like a cult mentality, it was just like, you know, like we're in this together, I'm the motivational leader, we against them, there's no explanations really needed to be given. Like you just trust the person. And I feel like that's what they're missing. Like they're missing like that full-on blind trust in the Cadian. And that is why, and for different people, like different people go different paths. This is like what worked for Cadian, and that's probably what he wanted like, to implement into the team, because that is his best way of getting results. Some other players, maybe they've never like, interacted with this kind of method, and that's why they're like, but why are we doing this like this? He's like, trust me. No, like, yeah, I trust you, but why? And that's where like you kind of break this. You can't have a cult with questions and explanations. That's my ugly.
It's a very enigmatic ending statement, but okay. Go on, Maui.
I like the angle. I like the angle a lot that you're taking. That it's like, even though Cadian just had such everybody buying in completely to the way that he wanted to play the game with heroic and defining it was a meta defining style. That's what he had with heroic, because when people were trying to find the best way to play and taking matters into your own hands as frequently as possible, which at the end of CS:GO felt to be the best answer to kind of the seemingly randomness of just defaulting all of the time. It was Cadian that kind of took the next leap for teams, as opposed to having a structured, layered map control default. Cadian's was all about just, hey, send two guys on a mission to do this. One guy played a block over here, take a huge risk by gamble stacking here. Like everything was kind of a risk, but you kind of knew that if you keep taking these risks over and over and over again, then eventually you're going to get good at covering up all the little holes in those risks. You're going to actually be able to learn to play that style. And I think that The problem is that with Liquid, there is just such a different set of expectations for some of these players. People like Twist and Nav are used to pretty quick success. They aren't used to having to relearn Counter-Strike in a way. And you really do think about, I would say, FaZe. I think about kind of the lineups that NAF has been on with Liquid lately. They were not nearly they were much more risk averse. That's what I would say. They were much more risk averse than the style that Cadian wanted to call with Heroic. And so, yeah, in terms of a clash on philosophy, I could totally see that Twist and Nav probably are like, why don't we play a slightly more airtight style that's a little bit more reliant on individuals and it's a little bit more spread out. But if we all do our job, then we're going to be fine. But the problem is that, like, for me, well, the reason I would probably like Cadian is good at taking a bunch of pieces that are probably, say, the 12th best player in the world to the 50th best player in the world and making them a team that's a top 10 team in the world. Whereas Twist is used to being like almost a top 10 player in the world. NAF is used to being almost a top 10 player in the world. If you have two guys like that, they just want to play the style that keeps them top players in the world. And Cadian's style is it's implied that you're going to do some things that sometimes your ass is not covered. Like you're sometimes taking a huge gambit on whatever Cadian says. And if it doesn't work out for you, not only are you not winning, but you're also getting bad stats. And you can't even go to bed at night comforting yourself, thinking to yourself, well, at least I put up a 1.2. Because if you followed Cadian to the death, then your rating is going to suffer for that. And so Liquid right now are in a really cumbersome position where they have two players that per role in NAF and Twist are probably actually, I think they probably are top 15 riflers in the world, top 20 players in the world. I think they're top 20 players in the world and probably even top 10 riflers in the world. Like they're really, really damn good right now, but they're playing with two. And I know Heccu, you want to say that they're still good players, but I'm going to just say Skulls and Yakindar are not good players right now. They are absolutely not good players. I don't know. Nothing in 2024 has indicated to me that they are good players today. They can be good players, maybe on a different team. Maybe they can go play with their fellow countrymen or something like that. Or maybe Yakindar can play with a Russian-speaking team or something like that. But either way, I don't think that they're working on this lineup. And then you have Cadian, who is the best at making a team better than the sum of its parts, and not necessarily utilizing all in all incredible star power. I mean, this is going to be a different claim, and I'm going to follow this one a little bit more closely. Can Stown keep his level from group stages on this Astralis lineup better than he did with Cadian on Heroic? Because maybe Device is letting him play a little bit more as an individual. Because as it stands, I mean, Cadian hasn't really proven that he uses world-class talent in the toughest moments at the best level. And so I think that there's just a huge disconnect with the roster. That's why there's just so many factors at play, and people are looking for simple solutions. I've talked ad nauseum about this topic in terms of things that I would have changed with Liquid. I think that you could replace Yakindar. I think you could replace Skulls. I think you should look at replacing Zeus. I think if there's a philosophy clash between Twist, NAF, them two versus Cadian, I think there is a case to change some of that, to then change Cadian. But I wouldn't touch NAF and Twist with a 10-foot pole right now. I would let them do whatever they want with the roster. And that's why this is incredibly confusing, because you would have hoped on, like, kind of, it's why team dynamics are always something that in theory you can make a lot of this stuff work, but then you have to see it play out, and you have to try to assume before the lineup even comes together, is there going to be an adjustment on the end of Twist and NAF? Are they going to buy into that system? Are they going to give up some of their comforts so that they can play into a more effective Cadian system? Is Cadian going to adjust his system to play better to his stars? And all in all, to me, Liquid, sure, maybe the world ranking says they're number 10, but to me, they're not really competing for real titles.
I know what you mean, because this is why when they made this team, I was like, Heccu, I actually thought this looks fucking sick. This could be like a super team. Like maybe this is actually like for real, could be like a permanent top 5 team, and they'll be like challenging for all the titles. But I did say, even at the time on all these shows, the problem is though, it's really ambitious. Like you have basically made a team that's, you're not like taking a team and adding a player. Like NAF and Twist, even when they played together, that was years ago. Like you almost start from scratch, and you're trying to make a bit like what NAVI did. You're trying to make this like totally international project where like you're all over the place. players. Remember, your coach is from Brazil. You got a player from fucking Latvia. You got some of the North Americans. You got this guy who's inexperienced from Brazil as a player. Like, you're all over them. You got Cadian, who only worked basically with Danish players as an IGL at least. Like, you've got so many like factors that if they go wrong can mess the team up. And I have to say, from looking at the team now, that's probably the one area I actually underestimated was the Cadian buy-in angle. Because when I think about it, Maui, I think you're right, actually. I actually think Cadian and Snappy are both in the same position in their careers, which is they seem like they're really fucking good at working with like lesser players and making like a way better team than you expect. And then what tricks you is this. It's one thing to have a player become a star under you as an IGL, and then you think, oh, they have like if I say Snappy there, people are going to think, what do you mean though? Snappy worked with like Spinks and Nerds and something. Yeah, they all became those players under him though. They weren't Spinks and Nerds before, and then they joined him and he had to like, negotiate like what role would you do or how do you, like they became those players playing under Snappy's style. So the problem I do worry about with Cadian is, like you say, he basically never had superstar players in Heroic. Like they were all nobodies / just decent, like low tier 1 players in some cases. And then they became really good under him because seemingly they had amazing buy-in. Like everyone just did what he said. Like I always think the thing that it can't just be speaking in Danish. The other thing about Heroic that people really miss that isn't at all existent in Team Liquid is when they would do those like instant rotations where there was obviously a call made. That's not just the language being quicker. That's like everyone just believing whatever Cadian says. Like essentially, it's like Heccu says, if he just says jump, they don't go, what reason is there someone there? They just do it. They just assume he must have a reason to make that call. In Liquid, the one angle that I didn't think about was this. If you have Naf, Yakindar, and these are huge personalities. And by the way, these people have all been top 20 players long before Cadian ever came in the door with a Team Liquid jersey on. Like you say, Maui, if they don't like their spot in the system and they're tanking their stats, right? One, I'm losing, and then two, I don't even get to like sort of say, hey, at least I did the case about, at least I popped off, at least I'm going to get my top 20. No, like actually, by the way, big players like that, not only if they don't like the angle, like they're not buying on the short term, they might not buy in long term. Players like that start to think like, you know what, maybe I'll just fucking chill on this and we'll see how it goes in a few, maybe like as we're seeing, maybe Cadian will be pushed out and then I'll just figure out my game from there. I do have a thing I want to flip back though. I want to ask Heccu a question, which is, obviously, normally people think of like Kassad and Yanko's bias because they know Nico and they're obviously friends with him, etc. I actually want to know this. How have you handled the Yakindar story? Because I will say this, Heccu, it's one thing when he became an in-game leader, and obviously his stats are a bit dodgy then, but he was switching role, he was trying something quite ambitious then. What have you actually thought? Because I have to say, I'm also shocked at this. Like, people think I'm a hater. I never thought like he'd have this many bad stats. I thought he'd have like, maybe be up and down or a bit straight. He'd have one tournament he carried, then one tournament he might not be as good. What have you actually thought about like Yakindar in this lineup though? Have you handled it? Is it like, I don't know, like, are you actually like super close friends? Are you just acquaintances? Where you at on this?
I would say like more of acquaintances because when it comes to Brokey, I don't get to communicate with him at all. Literally, what you see in the interviews, that's my only communication with Brokey.
Okay.
Because
you're even from his country. Right.
He's from a different city and he's not hanging out like in the local scene.
Right.
So like I don't really have a good reason besides like, I don't know, if I would write him a Twitter like, Brokey, let's be friends and be like desperate and stuff. When it comes to Yakindar, he would sometimes maybe like still like play with like some people from the local scene, and with him like he's more of an open person in that kind of regard. For me, obviously, it's this whole situation like is hard because of my bias and like like when I was biased and there were like good results, I was like, I'm gonna keep on like drinking, I don't know, this Kool-Aid, like I'm sold on this, like super, super easy. Like, and now like I don't see those results and I'm like, okay, I still wanna believe. I mean, the thing, when he was just brought into Liquid, it feels like he gave a lot because he kind of gave this like this European perspective. He also gave like maybe some CIS because previously he played under James, so like he gave like a lot of information that's like for that team, like it was a lot. But now we're kind of seeing like the results, at least like for his personal performances, like the numbers are not there. I don't know him personally to like know, like maybe his side of the story, if there's like something besides like what we see, if there's I don't know. But yeah, for me it is really, 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 really
does it hurt seeing all the people say to kick him and all the fucking HLTV, all the foreign friends?
Obviously, it hurts. It hurts.
Sure. Maui, I want to ask you this. I'll give you props. If people don't know, Maui was riding fucking super hard with your Kindar, obviously, because he sort of like
I
shaded him
remember.
on the way up, didn't he? So some people will think
Flashpoint.
you've done a heel turn now, Maui. Now you've just betrayed your blood brother or whatever.
I mean, with Yakindar right now, I mean, it's just like, it's kind of indefensible. That's basically it. But I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that the system is not working for him at all, and that like if you look at top players through 2024 attempt rates for opening kills, like Yukindar is right there with Donk and Xantares,
Right.
and like nobody's really even close to them. And it's like the system. I'm gonna say this. Xantares and Donk are better than Yukindar, first of all. But second of all, like Yukindar shouldn't have to go for this many openers on this team, and it should have a more like structured approach to getting these rounds started. And I just feel like the openers for Liquid are just like they're basically just sending him to die. Like sometimes he's running with no flash, and it's like, what's going on here? You know, like sure that sometimes is the case with like players like Donk and Xantares, but I would say that no. I would even say this: for Donk, there's more setup. For Donk, there's more setup than there is for Xantares, and there's more setup for Donk than there is for Yakindar. But I would even say that Xantares has sometimes better setup on Eternal Fire than Yakindar has So like I still hold out some faith that Yakindar can gain it back, because I just don't really see, even when I watch him, like I guess his aim is worse now, and I think that comes in part with confidence. But I feel like they're just sending him on these suicide missions. Like he shouldn't just be kamikaze piloting into bomb sites right now or into space taking role positions. Like at least give him something to work with. And the saddest part is like sometimes they're not even trading. Like what am I supposed to think if I'm just getting sent like that and no one's even there behind me to trade? Like at least send Twist with him a little bit more, you know? Like I also just think this, like if I'm Yakindar and the team is performing as badly as it is, and I just think the system is like failing, I almost feel like my fate is predetermined. And I would hope, like, that's me probably why I would never even succeed as like a top tier player, because I kind of think of the odds a little bit too much before I even like choose an engagement. But if I'm Yakindar, I mean, maybe like IGL brain does that to you. If you play as IGL for a little bit, you start to think about like, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but when you watch like Kerrigan or Snappy in a webcam and they're in a 1v3 clutch and it's just unwinnable, but it's the last round of the half, you just see them take a big sigh. They go like, and then they just go for it. Like they know that the odds are insurmountable at that point, and that's what IGL brain is. But if you see Brokey in that clutch, he's locked in. He's like, I'm winning this thing no matter what. And I think that Yakindar probably has a little bit of IGL brain right now, where he's just thinking to himself, I'm not winning. This is not happening, is it? Like I don't know what I'm setting myself into, and that's why in a weird world, I still have more, even though they've both been terrible players for Liquid this year in Skulls and Yakindar. I still hold out a little bit more faith for Yakindar, because I think that you put him in the right constellation of players or assembly, and I think that he can be a valuable tool, where Skulls has been self-reliant in the positions that he oftentimes had for Pain, and he's still just kind of mediocre in them. And it's just not really changing in that regard.
By the way, I just appreciate that we actually discovered that even to like native Latvians, Brokey's just a bit weird. He's just like, okay, doesn't even talk to them apparently. That's like, listen, just because Smooya's British doesn't we hate him as well. Don't worry about that. So,
I mean, they're both entertaining in a way.
It's true.
For a different reason. But I want to add like one more thing, like on the topic of IGLs, because I think like overall, like the reason why, Kerrigan eventually managed to win his like major title was because of all of the paths that happened like to all of like the players and their interactions between them.
Sure.
Because I mean, they, like when it comes to Rain and Kerrigan, like they had like such a pass, and then like he goes away. And who did Rain play with an IGL? It was like Nico that got to IGL. Was there like anyone else?
There's a Dren, Neo. There was a few of those like washed players that came in briefly, if you remember.
So briefly, so like whenever Carrie comes back, you're like, okay, it's in a way, it's kind of like of a relationship. You have like that ex that you're like, okay, you break up with them, you're like, I can find better, and then like you go through different things, and then you're like, they come back, you're like, yes, you are the best thing that happened in my life.
Okay.
And I think that is kind of the case for like a lot of players,
Sure.
like on FaZe. Like Brokey never experienced maybe like a really strong IGL, because like obviously Nico can call, but maybe like not on the level that Kerrigan. So like like he had to compare with that, and he's like, okay, Kerrigan is definitely an update. Then you have Twist, who like was in an A, where the NA struggles with IGL.
Sure.
He comes back. He's like, oh my god, it's so great. Robs came into Mouse, played under Kerrigan, then got to play without Kerrigan, and then came to Kerrigan. He's like, okay, I'm gonna be with you. So like all of like for them, through their own experience, they actually felt how it is to play with such a IGL and how it is to play without an IGL like that. Maybe when it comes to now like to the current Liquid, I don't know, for example, how much you can sell twists on the idea of Kerrigan, because right now, not Kerrigan, Cadian, because right now he will be comparing him like to Kerrigan. So that's one of the things. The same thing goes for Yikinder, right? He's gonna most likely be comparing him to Jaime. And when it comes to like with his like interaction with Jaime, I don't have an impression that this was like a full-on breakup. Like they were forced. Right. They were forced like to separate. Sure. So like, so maybe he's living with like this like, feeling, just like it could have all been better with him, but that is not an option. So like I gotta now like find a different option. Okay. So it's like, I mean, it's all like relationships. Some are romantic, some are not. In this case, like it's the teams, but I just feel like, yeah, like especially even right now, like they bring in Frozen, who it's the same thing. Yes. He got to play with Kerrigan. Yes. He got to live without Kerrigan. He's like, Kerrigan, take me back.
Exactly. Kerrigan knows what he's doing, because what he does is he waits till cynically you're in the worst spot ever. He's like, you up? Yeah. Sends that message,
Sup? What are you up to? Like, hi. Exactly. I miss you.
Yeah. By the way, the other reason why that's so mad as well is because I'm sure you might have seen this tweet, Maui, but like, Nitro went back to Valorant. He just went inactive again in Valorant right now. And when I saw that, I was even like, bro, a fucking laugh and twist just messaging this guy like, listen, Nitro, I feel like we never really appreciated you before. Like that shit. It's the same thing, isn't it? You just think you're like, just get back my ex. Exactly. I agree.
I miss you. That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Maui, hit me with it. What is your ugly point? What is your ugly point?
Mine is just the fact that we have all of these new questions for G2 after their run at Dallas with Stewie, and none of them are really being answered. Okay. There's rumors right now that MongolZ is not going to be playing at the last spring finals. And so in a weird way, it's like, well, now I guess we don't count this tournament for G2, and we don't count this because Hooksy is going to not get to work with his star player again, or whatever it is. And obviously MongolZ was instrumental and the main reason that they had that run at Dallas. But I think, like, in a greater sense, one of the cool storylines that developed from Dallas is that, well, now we finally got to see the isolated variable being removed. That you, myself, Kassad, Richard, a bunch of a few other pundits, I guess, were actually, you know what? I'll be like this. I don't think almost any pundits were saying it other than like us four. And usually people used to wrongly lump me in with you guys. Let me set the record straight here. Because people wrongly lumped me in with you, Kassad, and Richard, giving Hooksy like practically no credit. I gave Hooksy credit for quite a long time. Okay, I gave Hooksy credit for a pretty long time. I think the time that I finally jumped ship on Hooksy was at the Blast World Finals last year, where that's when the NAVI lineup finally was beating G2 for like a second time. And I was like, okay, at this point, you guys are just getting out-called flat out, because you have, like, NAVI has worse players, and yet they are beating a G2 with better players, and it's through tactics and sometimes the random EMA pop-off game. And so at this point, now I'm like on your guys' side, and I will say, like, I've heard, like, Launders rated Hooksy pretty highly. Maniac said that Hooksy was calling a top 3 T side in the world right before. And I'm like, I didn't know where they were coming up with these excuses, because that was not indicative. I could not find a case for what Launders and Maniac were saying about Hooksy in the last 5 months. Like, I couldn't see it with my own 2 eyes, or the stats. Neither backed that kind of statement up. And so I was getting really, and the thing is that finally, then I did jump ship, kind of like at the beginning of this year, and I was like, okay, Hooksy, we need to address this. Like there is a problem here, and he is not contributing to the winning Counter-Strike or the winningness that G2 should embody with the players that are on their roster. And I understand that Nex is a problem too, or like that you could have probably found a better anchor. But now we've actually seen that there's a proof of concept that Nexa can play on a championship roster, even though he had one of his worst tournaments possible. And so what's kind of the ugly point as a whole, and this is a little bit nebulous, is that it's just that Stewie showed that you could find a player that's simply better at trading than Hooksy, like literally just better at spacing to me, probably giving some semblance, some ideas to Nico, who was calling at the time at Dallas, and you could find a way to win a championship, which Hooksy has been unable to do, even though some of the bracket runs that he's had have not looked that hard. Like you've lost to Navi many times now, and this tournament you're beating some of the best teams in the world and doing it with two guys that are putting up 0.8 ratings. Like they're playing better overall team Counter-Strike without Hooksy, and now like the ugly is like when is there going to be a change? When is it going to happen? Because it's not going to happen after the spring finals, because they're going to want to give Hooksy another shot at it. But it's like when I looked up all the team ratings for G2, like at Dallas, in terms of overall rating, which generally indicates the firepower at the tournament, it was the second lowest they had it this year.
All right.
Like they at the PGL major, you know, they came top 4, but they had like
popped off, right?
Yeah, their ratings were way higher.
Yes.
Like, so it's crazy that their firepower can technically be higher at other tournaments this year, and yet they place worse. And there's just so many. The ugly is just that this has just opened up a huge can of worms, which is not going to be addressed anytime soon, because we have the spring finals, then we have a player break. And for my money, if I had to put money on it, I don't think G2 would make a roster change until after the end of the year. I don't think they're going to do anything until the Shanghai major is over, bare minimum, and probably the World Finals.
Okay.
So this is kind of a situation like where, for example, okay, so like Nico was IGLing in Dallas, but that was kind of because he was kind of like forced to. So like, I wonder what is like the overall like state of Nico right now, if he actually wants to sign up for that again and take like, you know, like all the possible like responsibilities and all of those things, because I do think he can IGL, but does he actually want to do that? Because if you have like a running company and an accountant gets sick, someone can take the responsibility for one day, but do they want to take like now be like, okay, it worked out with that accountant, we're gonna fire them, we're gonna bring in someone else who's gonna do the thing, and now you who took this responsibility once, you are now signing up for this like this whole thing. And that would be like a question first, like to Nico, like if he would actually want to now, like it's like one thing to invest like extra time and extra effort, because an IGL does like a lot of preparations. Obviously, all of them do preparations, but probably still like the coach and the IGL still do the most amount of preparations. Does like Nico want to like sign up for that on a daily basis, not just like for one tournament? That's a question to him. Like if yes, then like you can like start talking about like, oh, like Nico IGL and stuff like that. If he doesn't want to, like, well, then there's no like really other option. Like maybe like bringing in another IGL if people like really feel about like doing that. But who would you bring in? You know, it's we can't really decide for Nico. Like now, Nico, like look, you did so good. Now do this all the time. Not really for us to decide.
Sure. I do think that's an interesting point, because if people don't know, after the event, he did do an interview. It's on Dust2 US if you go and look it up. There's like a transcript of it where he said this line that was in the headline. But as usual, you got to click and read the actual context of the quote, guys. He did say it. The headline was, at some point in my career, I should transition into the IGL role. But if you read what he said, he intentionally framed it as like, but not yet, because he obviously, if you say now, you're basically saying kick Hooksy, that this will be what you're saying. So since he doesn't want to set that yet because they don't know what's going to happen to the team. He's just trying to make it like, but it could be any time in the future. That to me implies, because I think Device said something similar when he took over the role, that implies to me like, just take out the and yet part. He just means like, yes, when it's the right time, I do want to be the IGL. So to me, it sounds like he's up for the idea. He didn't just do it just as a standing approach. Maybe this is where he wants to go. And I sort of agree with Maui. The reason why it's good to put this in the ugly rather than the bad situation is I don't think this is the case that it's like just the end for Huxley. He must be removed. I actually think the funny thing is, it's just that it's gotten really complicated for Huxley because the real problem he has now is not, is G2 or are the players thinking like we say they could get a better IGL, because that is a very different question. Huxley, believe it or not, guys, think about logically, has a way safer job if it's just IGLs that can replace him, because then it probably does have to be someone who's from a better team. It probably has to be Carrigan or Apex, you know, like the players that aren't going to join instead of him. Like if you take an IGL now, you're probably gambling on them. Whereas the problem is, if it turns out Nico not only isn't like against the idea, if he actually wants to be the IGL, I can't lie, I thought it looked pretty good. Like his actual calls looked very crisp, mate. It looked like he kind of like was feeling the game. Like I would never guess, by the way, if I watched that game without the nameplates on, I would never guess that someone who wasn't the IGL looked like he was doing a very good job. And then also, if you now have a world where Nico can be the IGL, suddenly the recruitment process for other positions becomes a lot easier because we're not recruiting an IGL. Suddenly it's just recruiting players that do those roles. So that might be, Maui, some of the players we've talked about in the past, that might be a fucking Azantaris type person could walk in the door tomorrow and be an aggressive fragger. You could bring in, I mean, some of these players are gone now. You could have brought in a Jacob or something like that. Like these players are there. And I feel like if Nico can actually be a competent IGL, because by the way, he also looked at his individual game maintained as well, which is also very promising. Like at that point, if you're G2, it's a good problem to have. Like, it's actually opened a lot more doors, I feel like, a lot more possibilities for how to rework the team, because obviously you're going to have to do something roster-wise. But I do feel like if you're Huxley, it's ridiculous because in theory, every result except win the tournament, there wouldn't even be this conversation. But I even think, by the way, it's even worse for him that Nico did IGL. Like, remember, Stewie's been an IGL. If Stewie had just stood in, but also as an IGL, they probably don't win this way, and there probably wouldn't be this whole convo. But now it's all made us think, including Nico. And by the way, I think correctly, maybe Nico can IGL now. Like, if people don't know why I've said that on Twitter, it's because when I was critical, it was like 5 years ago. Like, he's had a lot of his career since then. He might have changed as a player, his relationship to how he thinks of the other players, what he expects from him. This isn't FaZe Clan Nico. Like, he's done a lot of, I mean, his entire game itself's very different since he's been in G2. So I'm actually open to the idea. Like, I don't dismiss it. I agree with Heccu though. He has to want to do it. Like, it has to be like this move with Device now, where the reason why a lot of us were scared initially is a lot of us wondered, did Astralis just make him say he wanted to do this job? Did they really just do it because, you know, they wanted to get rid of Blame F and this is like an excuse? You let Device do it for 3 months and then you try and sign Glaive, or you try and sign some big name player. If you're actually going to do it for real, like you're just going to be the IGL, and this is your career from now, I'm actually not against it, especially because, by the way, he was in CS2, he wasn't the same Nico. He wasn't the player like that was just dominating every game. So I don't even hate the move. I actually want to ask you two, would you be against like Nico IGL from here on out? Would you be up for the experiment? Would you sign up for that?
I don't want him to be an IGL yet. I want him to try to push himself for now, like, because he still has time. I want him to push himself and try to become the #1 player, not #2, because he managed to succeed with that. To push himself to be a #1 player, because that will be.
Why is Heccu like the Asian tiger mom? Like, listen, you already did #2, Nico. Now I need to have #1. #2's not good enough. #1 only now. Okay, go on.
Because like he already got to be #2, like, but he never got. You know, it's like for him maybe in a way it's like a check mark. And if he wants to try, this is the time. He can't be like, okay, I'm gonna IGL right now, and like maybe in 3 years or 4 years, I'm gonna try to go for the #1 title. No, that's unfortunately not how he can do that later. But right now he can try to push, and with that he'll not only put himself like this check mark, I got to be like the best player in like this specific year. He also makes like history because he's gonna be like the best player as a rifler. Because for such a long time we had Oppers as like the #1 player, and Nico was like kind of like a standout, or like recently Rob. So it was just like in the previous year, it was just like, okay, riflers can actually compete for the top 3 title. So if he gets that #1, at least he will get this satisfaction. He will also give like maybe motivation like to all the players in the scene, because they're like, okay, I can still like try to push myself to be like the best, and I don't need to like push this idea like, no, I gotta be an opper. I wanna be #1. Like, give me the op, even though like you don't really have a talent for an op. So for now, Do I think Nico can potentially can like IGL? Yes, I do. Would I want him to IGL at the moment? Obviously, not for me to decide. Nico can decide for himself, but I would want him to get that #1 title as like the best rifler in the world, and afterwards he can do whatever he wants.
Okay.
I would say mine, but I can't. I don't want to cannibalize my points on hot take point made. So
No, it's all good.
People have to tune in for that.
I'll just say the joke is obviously like again, the joke there is Heccu. Like when they go, oh, what blood type are you, Nico? And he goes B minus. You go, why not A plus? That's the joke there. That's
Yes, I get it, but he can do. He's a great, amazing, but it can be better.
Okay, that is true. That is true. By the way, for the last point, I've saved this one till the end because it's just a fun point and it's a little bit spicy. So for ugly, crucially, the framing is ugly, guys. I'm just going to say the Twitter back and forth / blow up between Launders and Dona. I'm just going to put that out there because this was glorious. Like, here's the problem, Maui. What's sad is if we had never done that episode with Dona, I'd probably be like, a lot of people in the scene who don't know, I'd probably just be hating like, oh, what fucking rude, how dare you? But I'd have probably done like my own little like clap back. But the problem is, once you've actually done like the show with it, you realise like part of it's Twitter and there's, you can't see what the person's looking at. Also, people are overreacting in the moment. Remember, in this case, literally it's like her boyfriend she's sort of trying to defend there while simultaneously battling people who are also famous in the scene. The problem is, I couldn't take it like, I don't know about Launders, I couldn't take it to heart. Like, I was just laughing the whole time I saw that back and forth. In fact, I can't even lie. I actually was like one of these like fucking catty American women, like getting the popcorn, like, serve the tea, yes, queens. Like, I was loving it, mate, because especially when she told him, even though, sadly, part of it was unintentional, guys. Like, if you don't know, she actually didn't mean he's ugly like he's actually fucking, like, butters or whatever. She just meant, like, it's ugly to be a hater. But even that was hilarious, because to be fair, actually, one thing you can't really say is he's ugly. He's pretty good looking, actually, to be fair. But that was also funny. The idea that it was, like, he's ugly and a hater. And then also, his original comment was so tame. Like, all he basically said was like, that like Nexus stats weren't good or something, or that he wasn't that great. So it was like such a tame comment, and she just went straight for the jugular, like. And then also she did the classic move, which this made me almost descend out the earth. It'd be one thing, if she just said you're wrong, and I disagree. But when she did that thing where it was like, you can't even understand the game.
Oh my god, yeah.
I fucking love it. Oh, mate. Because there's a fucked up thing I don't know if people know, which is, for some reason in British culture, like lad culture, we have this weird, I don't know if you guys have this in other countries, but we have this weird fucked up thing where if something happened to me that was really irritating, obviously I'd be really upset, it's irritating me, but if something really irritating happens to your friend, it's sort of funny in a fucked up way. So I don't know why, but in British culture, like, we love shit like that. As long as it's not me it's happening to. Like, look, if she was coming at me, this is probably the bad point, like, fuck, Donna, CS glow. But because it was Launders, I was just laughing, mate, the whole time. I was just sat back like, it's fucking amazing. Keep going. Like, but it was pretty ugly, I will say. Like, what a fucking weird day. So I also want to know what you guys think of that. Listen, I thought it was box office. It was entertainment. Like, it was straight fire. I even think in a weird way, Launders did his video. It would have been better if you'd have just actually for real just brought her on stream, mate. That would have actually been fire if you'd have done like a little back and forth. It could have even been like spicy. By the way, the sad thing is, I actually don't even think it would be that bad. I actually think you'd probably find a middle ground in it and get resolved like it did on Twitter. But I wanted to know what you guys thought, because I thought it was pretty spicy. I know it got like fucking, they put the genie back in the bottle the next day, but it was pretty good day. I thought it was fire.
I mean, I'm a fan of both of them, because I like that Donna is just like devoutly defending Nexa, because I mean, come on, if I had a significant other in the space that was a public facing figure and I play like absolute garbage but I still win a championship, I want at least one person to defend me,
Yeah.
It's like that meme of like if there are 1,000 Nexa fans on the planet, then I am among them. If there is only one left, I am that Nexa fan. If there are no Nexa fans, then Donna has left the planet. You know, like I'm okay. Like, that should be the new meme, actually. I mean, and then with Launders, like, I mean, all of his replies were just funny, kind of tongue in cheek, little back.
Oh, they were,
like,
yes.
I think people probably I know people get so riled up in this space. Like, I mean, the fans do at least. That people are like the things that Donna said are just like inexcusable, or like she should be banished from this space. And I'm like, this is like this is funny. This is funny, and I want Donna around in this space because this is funny. And I'm glad obviously that Launders just stood his ground on it, because a lot of people would kind of back down a little bit, at least, about like Nexa, I can see one winning Counter-Strike, whatever, let's like whatever. But I'm glad that he just stood his ground and just made it funny on his end. Overall, really good exchange. Probably one of the better parts of the Dallas victory was that not only did we get to see the Richard Stewie hot
that was
debate,
good too. That was listen. If it hadn't have been for the Launders Donna one getting top billing, you know, the UFC main event, that was the core main event. Obviously, I agree.
Yes, exactly.
Because the Stewie Richard one was pretty good too. That was pretty good too.
Yeah, they were both great. They were both like, for an event that felt like just all this craziness happened, all the storylines played out in such a hilarious way. Like, that was the cherry on top.
It's also, by the way, I mean, you can also appreciate this, Maui. It's also fun when it's just not you, because normally it's just me and you that the pros are directly coming out like, you don't know anything about the game and you'll never understand. Oh, okay, mate, whatever. Like, and no, I just get to laugh like, haha, yeah, she's wrecking him. Never mind my opinion about Nexa though. Like, what do you think, Heccu? Thoughts?
Maybe for you, it was also like, you know, like you see the situation, you're like, one of us.
Exactly. Yes.
But that's like, the thing is, that is like the format of Twitter. Like, you are limited in how much you can actually write, just by the amount of letters like you can put in, or by the format. Like, if you have like the subscription, like you can like write like a big text. No one is gonna read the long text explaining like all of the details. Like, and it goes for both of them. It goes for both like what Launders said, like, and what Donna said. Like, you know, like if she, for example, says like ugly, she didn't mean it in a way like physically. She could like write like a longer explanation, but this is not the format of Twitter. So like, we just make conclusions like on our like, I don't know, like of what is our first impression. And obviously, yeah, like maybe they went into this whole thing in a different mindset, because with Launders, it didn't feel like he kept on doing this in order to win the war. And I feel like really often like that is the case. Like, when you are starting an argument, you need to figure out like, what is your actual goal? Is your goal to just win at any stake? Like, then like you can use like whatever is possible, right? If your goal is like to maybe, hey, this is my position, I want to stay with it, then you could try to explain. With Launders, is like, I don't see a war here. It's like shits and giggles. Obviously, both of them work in a different state, because Launders is not one that was originally getting attacked, so he's like, what is happening with Donna? She like went into like this defense mode, like, which makes a lot of sense. If like your partner is being attacked, you want to like, because probably the thing is, it's one thing when maybe some kind of random fan says something, and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, like this person, he just like they just like sit on the couch, they don't do anything for like a living, like whatever they're saying, like, doesn't matter. Like, when it's someone like big that has like a big following set, like has, especially like if like they have like all the fans and they're just gonna like take whatever there's like, I don't know, like, you can say the influencer is saying like for granted, and then like they're gonna share that opinion. She wanted it to try to like to stop it. I don't know if it was in the best way possible, but it was like in a way, and I understand like why she had like those actions. I just hope that in the end there's like not gonna be any drama, no cancellations, no nothing. But
yes,
on the topic of entertaining, yes, that was indeed entertaining.
By the way, I'll even say one thing that people didn't even give her credit for is I do think this is both like the good and the bad of her situation. Is she obviously does have information the rest of us, especially those of us not in G2, do not have. Like, she actually can ask Nexa things and potentially get an honest answer in a way even I can't if I message her. Like, even if Nexa messages me off the record, how do I know if like he's still hiding something or he doesn't mean it? Like, she knows Nexa and people in G2, and obviously she was at the event, guys. So I imagine if she wants, she can go backstage and stand where they're doing the huddle and all the like sort of of stuff that normally you'd only see in a vlog or edited out of a vlog even. So she does have more info, but I do think in some ways, so one, people should give her a tiny bit of credit. She's not really just someone's girlfriend sat at home just imagining it all and just going like, or like, you know, when people's moms sometimes have a Twitter account like, hey, leave my kid alone. It's like, she's not doing that. Like, that would just be a bit silly. Like, she might not know what she's talking about, but I do think on her point though, if she was here, the point I would make to her is this. It's like, you're right, people don't have that piece of information, but they don't have to have that information. Like, Launders is just speculating from outside the team. He doesn't claim to know what's happening internally. He's just making his judgment as someone who does watch a lot of Counter-Strike. And by the way, even though I know her angle was like, you don't know anything about the gets, like, Launders does know about fucking CS. Come on, like, we don't have to make ridiculous hyperbole. You might not agree with him, by the way, and you might even say, that's it, more like this. I would have just gone with the angle of sort of like, yeah, but like, actually, there's more going on in the team than you know. I'd go for some angle like that, because if you actually phrase it in an abstract way, I think he'd even agree with you. He'd be like, well, yeah, I don't know what's going on in the team, but this is my thoughts. But it was just funny because I think she just got too emotional with how she responded in that way. Like, she just went, her problem is, and by the way, I can relate to this, she didn't like ease into it. She started at max speed, didn't she? She already was going at 100 mile an hour, as it were. Well, you know what? I can't hate on that. Again, think about earlier in this convo, I've had a few times, you know, put it this way, Maui, there wasn't even a safety, oh my God, never mind triggered this, but there was just no safety. It was just a machine gun one. It was like, that was my Twitter before, so I can't hate on it. I also did, like I say as well, I think it's funny as fuck though. Like, in fact, you know what's sad? The only thing I'm sad about is I'm the opposite to the rest of you. You're all thinking it's great now that like it wasn't really that big a deal. They resolved it all. I'm actually sad that it turned out she did just mean ugly in a different sense. I thought that would have been straight fire if her actual angles were, you know, nothing about the game and you fucking ugly. Like, listen, it's really rude, but it's fucking, that'd be box office right there. Like,
but that would be like this. The same thing, like with Mauis giggling like a monkey. It's like the same thing.
Yes.
It's just like it's like when you listen, if that is being brought as like an argument, you're like, not good, not good.
Obviously, Maui just needs to make a special s1mple shirt of the three monkeys, isn't it? You know, like, see no evil, speak no evil. You know, you just need to do a little Maui shirt like that, and then s1mple, like, there you go. See no evil, speak.
I'll find a way. I'll find a way to get him back.